Друзі, ми готові? Добрий день.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'd like to welcome you again at Ukraine Media Center. Let me introduce our next speaker. This is representative of the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine, Oleksandr Motuzyanyk, and he'll tell you about the current situation in the front lines. You're welcome. Welcome, everybody. Glory to Ukraine. I'd like to share with you information about the current situation as of noon today, March 19, about the Russian military invasion. So this has been the 24th day of the heroic resistance of the Ukrainian people, Ukrainian nation against Russian military invasion. Russian occupational forces have been continuing attempts to continue their attack against Ukraine. The main task is to destroy Ukrainian troops, to siege Kyiv, to get to administrative boundaries of Donetsk and Luhansk provinces, and then establish control over the left bank part of Ukraine, but they have not completed it. The enemy has been stopped around Mykolaiv, and so the enemy has been making airstrikes, bomb strikes, and rocket strikes against civilian infrastructure, using some weapons which are high-precision weapons, according to their statements, and uncontrolled aviation bombs. Since the beginning of military hostilities, there has been 291 rocket strikes, 459 rockets from sea, land, and air to land have been forced. 1,433 aviation strikes have been made. The key land targets of Russian invaders have been Ukrainian villages and towns, schools, hospitals, national historical and religious monuments, and residential quarters of our buildings, production facilities. Now I'll tell you in more detail about the situation in the key areas, combat areas. In Volyn direction, there have been no significant changes in the situation. In Polisia direction, some units of the invaders tried to establish defense lines around Políske, Kropivnya, Zhovtneve, Ozershina, Kopyliv, Motyzhiv, Gorenichi, as well as Bucha and Demidov towns and villages. To northwest of Chernobyl, the invaders, Kalita, Bogdanivka, Romny, and Nedrigailev have been used. Chernihiv is still partially blocked, where the enemy has been shelling against densely populated areas of the city with artillery. They try to keep their positions around Lubich, Mikhailo Kotsybinske, Yakubiche, Shestovitsi, Yagidne, Lukashivka, and Kiselivka with some units. There have been no significant changes in the type of operations and intensity of operations of the enemy in the last day. In the area of Brovary, using forces of up to 3 brigades, the enemy tries to control the line around settlements of Rudnya, Bogdanivka, Mikhailivka, Peremoga, Veliki Kropil, and Petrivka. There have been no active combat actions again in that area. At the same time, they haven't dropped the idea of effective offensive against Kyiv. They try to regroup their forces, their troops. In Slobozhanshina direction, forces, units of the western military district of Russia have not been involved in any active assault, active offensives. Instead, they try to keep positions around Svatova, Izum, Balaklia, Liman, Nedrigailevo, and Romny. In the area of Sumy and Akhtirka, units from the 1st Tank Army of the enemy, again, did not conduct any active attack. They concentrate their efforts on sieging the city of Sumy. They also try to concentrate on offensive against Sumy, Trostenets, Akhtirka, and Poltava. In the area of Kharkiv, some units of the 6th Army at North Fleet of Russia did not carry out any active combat actions. Active efforts are made by them to siege the city and to destroy its civilian infrastructure and to do air reconnaissance. In particular, during the last day, there have been Russian unmanned aerial vehicles, UAV of Orlan-10 type, flying, seen flying there. In Donetsk direction, enemy's units have been acting around Pervomaisk, Gorlivka, Yasinovat, Novotroitsk, and Pavlivka. In Luhansk direction, they have been attacking and shelling, trying to get Rubizhna and Popasna. Also, near Severodonetsk, the enemy made an attempt to move forward to attack, but they have not achieved any success, and they have incurred significant losses and withdrawn. In Azov area, during this day, they have shelled over our positions around Hulaypole, Stepnogirsk, and Darykhiv. They have been using mortars, artillery, and multiple launch rocket systems. In Kryvyi Rih direction, the enemy has been stopped, and they try to fortify there and to continue preparing for active attack. According to the information by the main intelligence directorate of the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine, Russian invaders have been actively mobilizing males in occupied territories in some in separate districts of Donetsk and Luhansk provinces, and use them to identify the positions of the armed forces in Ukraine. In particular, they have created some units which have been very poorly trained and have very pure morals. According to those people who have been mobilized by the Russian commanders, they use them as a link force to do some combat reconnaissance. They are sent to the front line in military cars, just neglecting the high probability that they will be lost. One of such units had 250 to 30 persons, and on 16th and 17th of March, they have lost about 200 of so-called mobilized soldiers in Mykolaiv area. Those of them who survived and came back to Kherson province have been completely demoralized, and they refuse to continue participation in combat actions. Also, from February 24 to March 19, the approximate losses of the enemy have been as follows. Manpower, about 14,400 persons. Tanks, 466 tanks. Infantry fighting vehicles, 1,470. Artillery systems, 213. Multiple launch rocket systems, 72. Anti-air defense systems, 44. Airplanes, 95. Helicopters, 150. Other vehicles, 914 vehicles. Ukrainian defenders, both females and males, continue to resist, showing a high bravery and heroism. We'll win together. Glory to Ukraine. That's it at the moment. Thank you. Thank you, Oleksandr. Dear colleagues, are there any questions?
Thank you very much. I'm Tim Judah from The Economist and the Financial Times of London. Could you just give an overview, because you've given quite a detailed picture, but it sounds, can you tell us whether the lines have moved significantly in the last few days, or whether more or less Russian troops are in the same place as they were? And could you talk about Mariupol? Do you think that Mariupol can last? Can stay in Ukrainian hands, or whether this is whether Russians will soon take it all over? Thank you.
Thank you. This was information for the last day, and there have been no significant changes in operational situation. The enemy has been stopped in pretty much every directions where they tried to attack, and in some areas they have been pushed away. In particular, in the last few days, around the capital city, the enemy has been pushed away as much as for 70 kilometers. About Mariupol, the city has been defending itself has been resisting and will not let the enemy get it. Any more questions?
This is Anas Malik from Beyond. So the Russian Ministry of Defense has said that it has used a hypersonic missile while targeting in the West. What does this mean for the war? Thank you.
Yes, we heard that statement by the Ministry of Defense of the Russian Federation. This information will be published now. We have been getting clarifications. It may mean the following. During all these days that Russia has been running war against us, of course, there is a huge arsenals of high-precision weaponry which has already been used by Russia, and now they have been trying to use new types of weapons. In particular, so-called high-precision Kinzhal missiles, as stated by the Russian Federation.
Telegraph in London. We are seeing reports that possibly up to 200 soldiers were at the barracks that was struck by that hypersonic missile. Do you have any updated casualty figures? Ukrainian. No, at the moment we don't confirm that information. You have to understand that the Russian Federation, in particular to their military aggression, that's part of a hybrid war, but they also run a disinformation, misinformation campaign against us, as well as diplomatic war, economic war, and so on. So all that information about losses in Ukrainian armed forces will definitely be published for society, and for the mass media will be brought to mass media's attention. So, do you have any further information about the theatre in Mariupol and whether people have been evacuated from it anymore, and whether there are any further updates on casualty figures?
Thank you. I get your question. At the moment, I'm not authorized to provide these comments. I know that elimination of consequences of this criminal shelling still continues, which is more difficult because of continuous shelling by Russian troops, which continue to chaotically shell over Mariupol. And all detailed information about this tragedy will be also disseminated to the public by the local authorities.
Is any change in the situation in Irpin and Bucha, and also above Brovary? Have the lines moved on either side?
No, within the last day, the situation there again has not changed. So more detailed information, if there are any changes, more detailed information will be brought to journalists' attention. At the moment, there are no changes. Thank you.
The military could organize perhaps a trip to, is it possible that the military could organize perhaps a trip to some of the places that we're not allowed to get to by ourselves, to show us some of the things that you've been doing that we're not able to do by ourselves?
Dear friends, I'd like to ask mass media, including journalists who came from abroad, we ask you, really ask you to understand the certain temporary restrictions in your activities because of high intensity of combat operations, combat actions, and because of huge danger for life and health of journalists. At the moment, those places where combat actions continue are closed, but we'll do everything possible as soon as the general situation improves. Work of journalists in front lines will continue. At the moment, I'd like to ask you, on behalf of the Ministry of Defense and on behalf of the General Staff of Ukrainian Armed Forces, to have some understanding of those temporary restrictions, but be ready and wait. Again, thank you very much, dear friends, for your work. Thank you, friends. Thank you, Oleksandr.
And I'd like to remind you that please monitor our announcements. Now we have been developing further schedule of our briefing, and we'll keep you informed about everything that will be happening here in Ukraine Media Center. I'd like to thank my colleagues working here every day to make it convenient for you, the journalists, to provide you with access to the most up-to-date and relevant information. I'd like to thank Skyloft Hotel for having us here, and see you again soon.